Welcome, everyone, to this week's podcast. Now, most parents dream of sending their child to college, but when the bill comes due, reality hits hard. Today, we're uncovering why so many families struggle to pay for college and what you can do differently. Now, I've worked with families across the country who faces this same challenge every year, and the solution usually starts with education. Now, today I'm joined with Al Hoffman and Gary Carpenter. So, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Al to get us started. So, Al, take it over.
Okay. Well, there was a comment I read, most parents spend more time planning their summer vacation than they do figuring out how to pay for college. And
Al True.
after
Al
dealing
True.
with after dealing with a very large number of families over the last 24 years, I could tell you that is the truest statement I've ever seen. That's an understatement. It sounds funny, but it's not. And particularly nobody, including me, nobody likes surprises. So when one sneaks up on you, you're going to get nervous, maybe even mad. So those that are listening to this and you're in that nervous, mad state, I apologize. I'm going to be sorry up front. I do have some ideas, but they're all for those proactive people who want to sit there and figure this out a little bit earlier. And there's a lot to do earlier. Um, I One of the things that I talk about is to have a yearly talk with your high school student, freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior. You can start earlier than that, believe me. But my point is that managing the expectations. I have seen so many parents, Chuck, Gary, I know you guys have too. So many parents that told their child as a way of motivating them to do well in high school, if you do well in high school, I'll get you to any college you want to go to. Well, that is a death sentence. That probably 9 times out of 10 will come back to bite you big time because the colleges are so expensive compared to when you went to college. So that's that surprise going like, oh my goodness, what do you mean they're 100,000 for 1 year? Yeah, that's the point. Back when you went to college, it was probably 30, 35 and I'm talking about private schools. So you really have to learn about the situation. Now, there's all kinds of stuff out there. There's books, there's podcasts like this. The big start here is to just understand the business model of colleges. And the business model of colleges starts with this very, very simple formula. The cost of attendance minus your student aid index, SAI, that's administered by the FAFSA, or your EFC, expected family contribution, EFC, administered by the College Board. Those are your two forms, and they're going to create a number. And that number is then going to be subtracted from the cost of attendance, and that's going to create need. You have to start out with that first piece, and you really need to go further than that. Not just understand that basic formula, but actually spend a little bit of time going to places that will offer you a close estimate of what your SAI and EFC is. Now you can start to plan. Now you can sit there and say, okay, we're going to look at this. We're going to look at that. Now, it throws yourself into the second trap. Okay, the second trap is people will say to me, oh, we make too much money. Well, that was true probably 10, 12 years ago. Ain't true anymore. Remember, I said the colleges have broken the six-figure cost of education for 1 year. And that being the case, you probably do qualify for assistance in a very big way, actually. So it is becoming knowledgeable. Informed parents and students will make better decisions because it's just common sense, really. But you got to do the logic part before you do the emotional part. The emotional part is what gets us to spend more money than we should, or money than we need to get the job done. And that's a higher education for your child to kickstart them into their career for their walk on this planet. Okay, this mudball I cut all the time. So I'm trying to say, seek out the books that will talk to you about how the college system works. In the formulas, both the Department of Education and the College Board, FAFSA and Profile, both of them use prior year tax returns on those forms. 2 years. So if you're going to college in 26, 27, you're going to use your 24 taxes. Well, come on. You're to try to plan 2 years in advance. That's the minimum you have to do, 2 years in advance, or you may not get what you want. For those people that don't really have any control over their income, this is probably a moot point. But for those people that are the self-employed, they get maybe working with a company, they could adjust their income. There's a number of things, number of strategies you could do. Okay, got a little preachy there towards the end, but Gary, I'm going to turn this over to you. You got the accountant side of this thing. Talk to us a little bit more about these incomes and assets and things like that.
Thanks, Al. Well, let's look at some different things. They're going to look at income and they're going to look at assets when we do these financial aid forms. And everyone says, "Well, I got to watch my assets. I've got to be careful there." Step back a second. They're going to, on the FAFSA form, after certain deductions from your income that you're going to get, whatever that balance is, they're going to assess probably at 47% availability for cash for college. Okay. Now, assets. You're going to get an asset protection allowance. And then after that, whatever assets are going to be assessed are going to be assessed at 5.6%. So I'm just going to do the math with you here. 47% on income, 5.6% on assets. Where's your greatest advantage? And that is working with your income and trying to control that. So just keep that in mind. Now, there's things I call tax scholarships. What this is where you enact certain tax benefits for the family or for your business that generates tax savings that you wouldn't normally have. And you use those savings to help pay for college. And let's just go to a home-based business or a small business, okay? One of the first things you should be thinking about is employing the student. They're going to be able to generate some income. It's going to be deductible by the business, okay? Think about things like that. Another thing underneath that, if you got a small business, you might want to look at what's called a Section 127. That's an employer-provided education assistance program. And this is where the student can receive up to $5,250 a year. It's non-taxable to the student, deductible by the business, and the funds can be used for college. There's not a whole bunch of complicated paperwork to set this up. It's relatively easy. There are some strict rules you have to follow, though. And you need to consult with your accountant when you decide to do something like this. And again, I think that's a key point. Consult with your financial accountant and explain to them the situation you have and what you're trying to do. And work hand in hand with your accountant and your advisor to try to start to set up some funds that you can use later on for college. Be proactive. Start as soon as possible. I'm going to talk a little bit about 529 plans here in a second, but for those that can, you need to start a 529 plan as soon as possible. The longer you have that money in there, tax deferred to be used for college, the greater the earnings you're going to have on that. So that's very important. Also, there's this myth about, don't have any assets in the student's name. Well, that's partially true. If you're going to be need-based, you're going to receive financial aid. You don't want to have assets in the student's name. But if you're not going to receive any need-based aid, why not have assets in the student's name? And going forward, that's a good way to defer some earnings that you might make on that money. Now it becomes earnings of the student. The other thing is clarify the need, okay? And what are you going to have, a need-based situation or are you going to have a merit-based situation? And there are two different types of financial rewards for the student. Need-based is going to be based on your income and assets. and they're going to determine what type of help they can give you based on those numbers of your income and assets. Merit is based on the academics of the student, special talents. They could be drama, they could be in music, they could be sports, any one of those merit-based items that the student brings to the table. They're awarded based on the performance or the grades of the student, not on the income, whatever. You can make $1 million a year, but if you got someone who's a very good student or a very good musician and they want them, they will award merit money based on that. So let's see here. Some of the other things. Oh, here's one I'd like. The way the FAFSA is set up right now, they do what's called a direct data exchange, and we call it a DDX. Now, what does that mean? What that means that in the past, we actually had to put in the numbers from the tax return into the FAFSA form. Now, they have a situation where they have a link between the Internal Revenue Service and the FAFSA. And once you approve that, they go in, they grab the information from the tax return and bring it directly into the FAFSA form. Now, people say, oh, do they bring the whole return in? No, they don't. They'll bring a few items like your adjusted gross income, your earned income, your filing status, the number of dependents that you have. And I think there's one or two, taxes that you pay too. And there may be one or two other items, but that's it. They're not bringing the whole return in. But what this does is they're looking at, as Al said, 2024 income for the school year starting next September in 2026. So they're going to grab that income and they don't have to verify it because they got it directly from the IRS. So they'll use it as a basis going forward as to whether you're going to qualify for any need-based aid or not. I think the most important thing is, remember, college and your taxes and your retirement are not working against each other. They should be worked with together. Don't give special treatment to one area and not the other. You have to have them work hand in hand in order to be successful in this situation. Find a good advisor. You're not going to be able to understand all the situations that are going on or the tax rules or anything, so find a good accountant, okay? And the best thing is, don't wait until the senior year to decide, what are we going to do? Can we do this? It's too late.
Amen.
Some of the things you should have done, you might have had to have done 12 months ago, 2 years ago, 18 years ago when the child was born. They're all things that you could have been doing in order to prepare for college. So with that, Al, I'm going to bounce it back to you.
Well, I got to tell you, the one thing that Gary, I don't particularly care for these net price calculators on the college's websites, but a person says, where am I going to go to get some information, at least a close call of an estimate for cost? And you could do this all the way to middle school. I mean, you pick a college, any college, go on to their website. It's required by law to have this, quote, net price calculator. It's what it's called, net price calculator. And you put in your data points, your income, your taxes, like Gary just said, and a couple other points, the age and the size of the family. And based on that college's business model, and they're not all the same, some don't give very well and some give 100%. So based on that model of that college, you'll get an estimate of what it's going to cost to go to that college. And that will be an eye-opener. That'll be an eye-opener. You might be mad for a couple of days, but that at least will get you at least into the ballpark of what you should be starting to plan for in the form of cash flow and many other things. And I got to emphasize this one thing that you mentioned, Gary. Really seek out an advisor. I know this sounds salesy, but I got to tell you, they are worth their weight in gold in this particular avenue, this particular area. They are really, really even if you just pay for an hour worth of consultation for a guy and or gal and educational consultant that understands the systems, you can get a lot of questions and a lot of awareness and a lot of education and become not fully informed, but better informed in a short hour. So an hour consultation can set you up. And then if you see that the value there is more than you thought, you might even go further than that and say, yeah, I'm going to engage you for the whole college process. Chuck, back to you.
I'm going to touch a little bit here on the different types of scholarships to put more money into your pocket. Now, there are two different types of scholarships. You may hear from your guidance counselors that scholarships are given out based off of need or based off of merit. Well, they're exactly right. They're need-based scholarships and they're merit-based scholarships. But that's not the definition most families need to go by. And what I'm talking about here, once again, it's related to your taxes. You've got to go by the definition of the Internal Revenue Service. And the Internal Revenue Service, when it deals with scholarships, regardless of whether or not they're need-based or merit-based, they define scholarships as either qualified or non-qualified scholarships. Now, what does this have to do with everyday individual parents out there? It directly relates to the American Opportunity Tax Credit as well as the Lifetime Learning Tax Credit. Now, a qualified scholarship, these are individual scholarships that are tax-free to the student. And in that situation, if you take a scholarship and you make it qualified, and qualified means it's basically being used to pay for tuition and required fees. It does not cover room and board or miscellaneous expenses or non-required books and supplies. So tuition and fees, required fees. Now, if you use a scholarship for those particular sources, the student will receive that scholarship without any tax consequences whatsoever. Now, the bad news on this is that if your student does get a scholarship, it could be eliminating themselves if they take it tax-free for up to $10,000 or more in tax benefits on your federal income tax returns. Now, if you make the scholarship, and in a lot of situations you can do this, as a non-qualified scholarship, the student will have to pay federal income taxes on those dollars. Now, once again, the student has a standard deduction, so they could get $12,000 or $13,000 without paying one dime of federal income taxes. So it would still be tax-free to you. So you need to get with a competent accountant or a CPA that understands these rules whenever it comes to scholarships, and making sure that you're using the scholarships to your advantage to where the Internal Revenue Service could possibly give you through your student stay in college under the American Opportunity Tax Credit and Lifetime Learning Tax Credit up to $10,000 or more that now can be used to help pay for the cost of a college education. Now, we're also writing an ebook that's going to explain a lot of these things in a simplified manner. And of course, we'll let everybody know once we get it all put together. So what I'm going to do, instead of getting in the weeds like what Gary always tells us, I'm going to turn it back over to him to add anything else.
Thanks, Chuck. I'd just like to take a second because I don't know how many people say, "Well, I'm going to pay for college out of income." Okay, and some people can do that. Not all of us can do that, especially today, as we've all mentioned. We got some colleges up in six figures per year. Okay, so I just want to show you the power of investing early. Okay, and this could be into a savings account, a CD, mutual funds, whatever, but just putting money aside. Okay. Let's say we've got, hypothetically, a student going to a public institution and it's going to cost $25,000 a year or $100,000 for 4 years. And if you can set aside, and you have to start off when it's early, but if you can set aside that $100,000 and let it start to grow, it's unbelievable the power of the growth over that period of time. And let's say, for example, we have a 50-year-old who's going to retire in 15 years, and they've set aside $100,000 for college, and they've let that grow for a period of time for 15 years. And again, it's been just sitting there. And hypothetically, 8% return. The value of that $100,000 after 15 years is $330,000. Now you're going to say, well, I got the $100,000 when I'm 50, I got to pay it off now. If you had the $100,000 when you were 35 and it grew for those 15 years at 8%, that'd be $330,000, more than enough to pay for college. Now, people are going to say, where am I going to get 8%? Okay, let's be conservative here. Let's say you only get 4%, half of it, okay? That's $182,000. It's still going to be able to pay for college plus have money left over. So again, this drives back to the point, start early, as soon as possible. Start putting some money away. Whether you like CDs, whether you like 529 plans, whether you like mutual funds, start something and give it a chance to grow, because time is the only thing that's going to help you out as far as getting a large sum of money set aside for college. I'm sure I've confused people enough now, so I can pass it back to, let's see, it's going back to Chuck. You got it again.
I like that example you gave there with the 50-year-old and the 45-year-old putting money back. And if you look at that, that is actually what the college, if you're going to spend $100,000 for a 4-year college at a public university, the time value of your money for that education, like what Gary said, is going to be right around $330,000, not $100,000. That's lost opportunity cost that could be used to put back for retirement. And that's the reason why to plan early and make sure that you're getting the most benefits out of the financial aid system, as well as the state, as well as the college and the university. So what I'm going to do is let's put all this together. Now, most people don't struggle with the college costs. They don't care. They struggle because they don't plan soon enough. We can't emphasize that more than anything else. But the good news on this is that you can change that by planning early, learning the rules, and make your money work smarter for you, not harder. Now, if you'd like to learn about specific strategies that can reduce your out-of-pocket college expense and increase your retirement savings, you can visit our website at www.prepareforcollege.com. Now that's prepare4college.com. And remember, there's always a smarter way to pay for college. And it starts with understanding how the system actually works and how you are filing your federal income taxes. So I want to thank everybody for listening today, and we'll see you next week at this particular time. So I hope everyone has a good day. Bye-bye.